What would it take for you to genuinely enjoy your life beyond the fleeting highs? Have you ever wondered if a simple shift in your daily habits could drastically improve your relationships and happiness? How would your life change if you replaced ego driven actions with empathy and kindness? And what's the one step that you could take today to start moving from frustration to fulfillment? Could the key to your own happiness be already within you? And if so, are you ready to unlock it? Join me after the intro for a conversation with a very special friend with whom we will answer these and many more questions. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's start. Hi, I'm Rosanna D, and this is Forgive and Thrive, a podcast where we explore what thriving in life means and how we can achieve it, irrespective of our past, current condition, and expectations that those around us or society in general may have. Let's go. Welcome to the Forgive and Thrive show. Let's face it, life can sometimes bring out the worst in us. Stress, ego, and even frustration with our own progress can lead us down paths that don't feel good or fulfilling to us. But what if there was a better way to live? What if one could shift from a place of negativity and dissatisfaction to one of joy, balance, and fulfillment? Today, we want to go on a journey where we embrace change on a deep level. It's not just about putting an happy face on. It's about transforming how we think, feel, and act in the world. By becoming more self-aware and learning to practice empathy, gratitude, and purposeful living, we might find that the life we want is closer than we think. And we dive into this fascinating topic in a conversation with our guest, Ernest Wood. Ernest is a U.S. Navy veteran, author, and coach. He was born in a small town in California. His mother was only 14 when she had it and raised him as a single mom. At some point in his life, he became a complete asshole, just to use his own words. He lied, cheated, stole, was hateful, and a miserable person to be around. He couldn't find joy and happiness with anything until he decided that he needed to change. He tells about his journey in his first book with a very interesting title, I should say, Hustle to Awesome, Journey to Joy and Happiness. A lot less hustles. Today, he coaches high-achieving individuals how to master their lives with balance. Hi, Ernest. Welcome to the Forgive and Try show. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Fantastic. Well, I'm really keen on talking about this topic because I believe that everybody has the potential to be an asshole every now and then. But before we go into that, I would like to start with you, and in particular, what you meant with that version of yourself and how you became the person, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So I think everything just built up in life, and I didn't allow anything to go away. I just kept piling crap into my backpack that I would carry around, and I just kept getting a little more angry and a little more maybe racist at sometimes, a little more sexist, a little more set in my ways, my one way of thinking, and it was just that collection, right, of the environment that I was around. And when I finally got out of the little town and I came over and moved down by San Diego area, I started looking at myself a little more in the mirror, and I just didn't like the guy that I was. I had times where I was happy and able to have some joy in life, like when my children were born and certain, like, specific events, but the overall happiness just wasn't there. Didn't have gratitude for a lot of stuff. I couldn't forgive anybody. Just kind of a grumpy, not even an old man at that time, but a grumpy guy.
What would you say are the things that really cost you, or the former self, that former version of yourself cost you in terms of life?
I'll tell you, it cost me quite a few promotions. There was definitely times that I didn't get the promotion because of that. I think in some ways it's cost me a little bit of the relationship with my sons. One of them, we've kind of worked through a lot of stuff. We chatted quite a bit and we're on a pretty good scale. The other one, I think, still holds a little resentment towards me for, things of not being a perfect parent, right? Tried to be the best one I could be, but I was super disciplined and I was still mad at my father for not being there. So I, in some ways, I directed it towards them by making it so hard on them that they weren't allowed to make mistakes. Like that was what I knew. That was my job as a dad, is not to help them not make any mistakes in life, not realizing that mistakes is, how we grow and how we become a better person. And yeah, so once I finally figured it out, hey, it's okay not to be perfect and it's okay to make mistakes and you just got to learn from them instead of being mad at yourself for every mistake you make.
Did you have a turning point in your life? I know you mentioned already when you moved to San Diego, but was it there a specific event that triggered this reflection?
Yeah, I always, well, in the book, I talk about it. There's two incidents because I started working on it and I just would always get stuck. I always got to a certain point, and I think it was because I never knew where I really started from. And I would just follow all these books. I've probably read 500 self-help books, got into coaching. But one day I was driving up to the high desert. I was in my truck listening to Brian Tracy talk about not giving our emotions away to other people. At that same, almost the same exact time, I see a BMW coming on the road. He cut me off. So I get right next to him. I honk, I flip him off, mouth a few words. He brake checks me, flip me back off. I go crazy, shaking and freaking turn red, sweat going down my back. So I whip to the side. I cut off a bunch of people. We're flying down the freeway, just back and forth. And I finally get next to him and I see he has a kid in his car. So, like, when I saw that he had the kid in his car, it was almost like a slap in the head, just saying, dude, what the hell are you doing? Because I remember doing almost that same kind of thing with my kids in my car. It was a really eye-awakening experience because I just gave my emotions away for something that was totally ridiculous. All I had to do was slow down 10 miles an hour, 5 miles an hour, and there would never have been any kind of incident, right? We can't control what other people are going to do, but we can control how we react or respond to everything. I try not to react to anything anymore. I respond to stuff. So from there, I was really working at it, but I still had some anger issues and lack of patience. And then one day at work, this one of my good buddies, he says, "Man, you're just like, we'll just call him Bobby or whatever his name is at work." And nobody wanted to be like Bobby. He all he did was bitch, complain, whine, cry, use the F word all day. There was never a positive thing out of that guy's mouth. And that was the two things that like I knew I had to change from then on because I didn't want to go through life being like Bobby. And you shouldn't compare yourself to anybody, but if somebody compares you to somebody that everybody does not like to be around, then maybe there's a good chance that you should change or I should change.
What was the biggest challenge that you had to face from the place where you were to break free from the past or negativity?
The two biggest things that I found that I lacked, well, actually, there's three of them, and I kind of put them in the same little group. It was gratitude, forgiveness, and empathy. I had no gratitude for anything in my life. I figured kind of from my upbringing, I had to, scratch and claw and get whatever I could get. So I just figured whatever I got, I earned. I wasn't grateful for it. And then forgiveness, I didn't forgive anything. I didn't forgive myself. I didn't like I pretty much didn't care when my dad died. He died. It was like, eh. My mom recently just passed and she had an issue with forgiveness also. So I think it kind of runs down the family. So I learned gratitude and forgiveness. And then it helped me have empathy and look at there is two sides of every story. There isn't just my side because for so long in life, probably 40 years, maybe 43 years, 44 years, there was only one side of life to me. There was my side and there was the wrong side. So those were the two hardest things, or three hardest parts.
How do you cultivate that sense of gratitude and appreciation for life today?
Well, with gratitude, what I do, and it helps so much, and there's actually studies done on it that every single day I try to write at least three things I'm grateful for. One about me, one about my spouse, and then or kids, and then one about the world in general. By doing that, it resets your mind because now you're constantly looking for things to be grateful for instead of constantly looking for, excuse my terminology, but the shit in life, right? It's you start looking for the good stuff instead of the stuff that you don't want there. And it really does help because it's almost clinically impossible to be grateful and depressed at the same time.
So that is your recipe for anybody listening now?
I'll tell you what, it's helped. Well, depression ran in my family. My uncle killed himself. My grandma suffered through it really bad. My mom, different stages. I had it throughout life. And once I learned gratitude, like forgiveness, and also I'm a big fan in meditation and journaling, I haven't had a bout of depression in over 10 years. No, absolutely. I will not take any pharmaceutical drugs for rarely anything basically. There are, chemical stuff. I'm not a doctor. I can't go into all that stuff, but a lot of the depression is just from lack of awareness, lack of being able to breathe properly, lack of physical awareness because most of us are not in good physical shape anymore. We're going backwards as a society. We're profoundly sick. In just America, 131 million people are on some kind of prescription drug, and that's just the adults. 78% of people are obese. The numbers are just piled up, right? And it just keeps getting worse and worse. And most of it or a lot of it can just be cured by having the right mindset and self-awareness.
So are these the major problems that you find, people that you're working with as well?
The first one, it's usually like lack of energy, right? It's so many people get so focused on creating a successful business that they forget about the rest of their life. Because if you look on social media, you look on the news, you look on everything puts money and materialistic stuff on a pedestal, right? It holds it up to the highest. And so you see people chasing stuff all the time, like trying to get a better car, trying to get the bigger house, trying to get it's all to impress people most of the time we don't even like. You're trying to impress a neighbor over there, and half the time they're not even thinking about you, but we're thinking about them, thinking about us. Yeah, I find that people just forget to have the fundamentals in their life, the basics. And my basics, like they revolve around the physical, mental health, relationships, and legacy. And if you can build a good fundamental foundation, then you can have balance in your life. And I don't use balance as like you have to have 8 hours of this, 8 hours of this, and 8 hours of this, but you might have to work 14 hours, but you can take, 2 minutes to call your wife and say, hey, I love you, doom, doom, doom. And then also communication, having them communicate what the 5 year plan is, what the 1 year plan is. Now, instead of them being separate from the business, they're actually part of it and they're helping you move forward.
You just mentioned calling your wife. So how relationships have changed in your life when you moved from that negative person to the more positive one? And what do you witness with the people working with you in terms of, again, shift in their relationships?
For me personally, like the biggest thing is that I rarely get in any like big arguments anymore. Before I used to like almost like them because, if somebody said I was wrong, I was going to prove that I was right. And that doesn't ever work out. We all know that, trying to prove your side to somebody else and both people were mad, that rarely works out. So most of the time now, it's all about being able to listen, have communication, and also, with my little gratitude journal, every once in a while, like I might have to pull it out when she thinks that I am not having, that I'm grateful for the stuff that she does. I'll say, look, every single day, like I write something grateful about you. And it sometimes that'll settle it down. A lot of it is just what I have found is people just get so tired because they're not doing the right things. If you're not getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep, there's a saying that your physiology drives your psychology. So if you don't feel good about yourself, it's hard to put that onto the next person, right? If you're feeling like crap, most of the time you're going to treat that next person like crap. You're going to have a worse attitude. You're not going to be able to focus on the things that are good and not sleeping enough. So now you eat some crap that you shouldn't eat. And then maybe you forget to drink enough water that day. And now all of a sudden it's like a downward spiral. And I think a lot of it just stems from that. If once you're able to have proper movement, proper sleep in your life, proper hydration, and a decent diet, it changes your mind so much. And it just allows you to be more focused, be more aware, be happier. Then it builds up the other way instead of falling down the bad way.
I think it's a very difficult thing to do in today's world because sometimes we don't reflect enough. We don't stop and put together all these elements. We have a pain, for example, a physical pain. We go to the doctor, we take a pill, we follow a very short period of a better regime. I wouldn't say necessarily a good regime. And then perhaps we move back to whatever behavior we had before. But we don't put all these elements together. So, what would you advise to anybody listening to start looking at? So, what would be the signs, for example, that may point them towards, well, you know what, this situation here is really not working for me, and the answer might not be the most straightforward. I need to dive a little bit deeper.
That is a great question. Again, I am a big believer in journaling because when you can reflect at the end of the day and you want to pick out what caused you to maybe get mad, right? Maybe there's a certain thing. Like I had this time issue, and I never knew where it came from until I started doing this work. I absolutely could not stand somebody being like 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late. I would be so pissed off. I would ruin the day, but it was a trigger that I had. And the trigger was because my dad, when my mom and dad separated, my dad would call probably maybe once a week, once a month, whatever. Hey, I'll be right out to pick you up. And then he wouldn't even show up half the time. Sometimes he would show up 4 hours late, 5 hours late. So my brother and I would sit there at the little window looking out, waiting for him to come. And after about an hour, and then we would start fighting because we had to get that energy out somewhere. So then we fought. So that was my trigger. It was because if somebody was late, I was thinking they weren't going to show up, and it brought all those bad things back in. But once I was able to figure out what my trigger is, then now it's just like, whatever. I can't control if somebody's going to be late. All I can control is my response, right? And by picking out triggers and what makes you mad, what makes you happy, and it's like you said earlier, it's that self-reflection and being able to find those things. I would definitely say start with some journaling, keeping track of your day. I'll use the word anal about how I start my mornings and how I end my night. Some people call them like bookends, right? Because those are the two times of the day that you have control mostly of your life, right? What time you wake up, what do you do before you get out to the craziness of the world? You have control in there. And I set my mornings up so like an algorithm. If I wake up, I do this. If I do this, then I do this. So my mornings are set up really nice and it allows me to get into the day feeling as good as possible. And then when I go to bed at night, I do certain things to help get the best amount of sleep, which rolls into the next day. And those are the little things, is just finding for the first week or so, is just finding what triggers you, what sends you off in a bad direction, what sends you off in the good direction. So I would say start there. And then the big thing is don't try to change everything at once. One little habit, get rid of one little bad habit, insert one good habit and just keep building upon that. It's that whole small baby steps. Do always moving forward.
That is so interesting. So, what would be your morning routine then? What do you do? How do you set up yourself for winning the day?
So my morning routine is I wake up between 5:45 and 6:15. My first thing I do is I take a pinch of Celtic sea salt with 8 ounces of hydrogenated water, and then I meditate. I do three rounds of Wim Hof breathing. Absolutely love doing that. It's fantastic. And then I finish after the 3 rounds of Wim Hof breathing. I do another 10 to 15 minutes of meditation, and then I go straight into doing some kind of workout outside, getting the early morning sun. And it helps with like D vitamin, your K vitamins. It also helps with some of the different hormone drops and brings in different things like kind of resetting your circadian rhythm. And then I go from there. So then I go work out. I have this little thing. I'm doing 300 push-ups every day now for a year. I'm shooting for 100,000 for the year. And then I go to deep work or whatever I'm working on. So my number one priority for that day, which would be either writing my new book or I have a bunch of little training courses that I go through. So those are set up and that takes me out to about 9 o'clock. And I set everything up in half-hour periods. What I notice is how long I can focus for is about 28 minutes. I can give something 100% focus for about 28 minutes. I wish I could get better, but I'm working on that. But most people are going to be right in that same range. And there is no such thing as multitasking. Just switching from one little task, like say chatting with you, to looking at my phone and coming back and chatting with you, takes about 30 to 45 seconds of your mind switching between the two tasks. It's only going to focus on one thing. So when you can actually focus on one thing, for me, 28 minutes, and then I get up and I move around. I make sure that I get my 5,600 to 10,000 steps in a day. And I'll give you why that is important is because like at 5,600, there's all kinds of extra hormone drops. There's a flush for your cortisol. There's a boost in testosterone for men. Serotonin levels rise. But most of the world right now, we're averaging under 4,700 steps. So we never even get to that spot that allows that to happen for, the good stuff that the body does naturally doesn't even get there because we're so sedimentary. So that's the way I set up my morning.
It seems for someone perhaps that has no routine and has so many little issues that they would like to address, perhaps it seems a little bit overwhelming to have a routine like yours. So, where can someone really start?
Biggest one, and the funny thing is like with my routine, it might sound like it's busy, but I just flow so easy through it, and there's no stress. Like I have no stress in the morning. My wife, on the other hand, she's not quite into that routine thing. So her day, bounces back and forth. And a lot of times she starts off the day, she's so stressed out already before she even gets to the car because she just finds one task, that task, bounces around. But I would say, like the night before, write down the 5 most important things that you need to accomplish the next day. And then you can have a list of like 10 other things. But you can start with brainstorming, right? So for a 10-minute on a piece of paper, write everything that you need to do tomorrow. And then you're going to pick out the 5 most important ones, put them on one side of your paper, and then the rest of the stuff is on the other side. And now that you have those done, you know what the number one task needs to be done for the day. And you can just start knocking off the most important things. And then all of a sudden you start feeling like you've succeeded in something. It's that whole thing of like making your bed the first thing in the morning, right? It's what that does, it just gets you that you have accomplished the task already. You feel good, it looks good, and it just puts you in the right little mindset. So start with one baby step. Maybe your thing is that you always sleep past your alarm and your alarm is set for 7:15 and you always tap it 3 times. So your first thing is going to be no more tapping the alarm. At 7:15 you get up. And a good way of doing that is I can't remember the lady's name, but it's a rocket ship analogy. She goes 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and she just does it.
Mel Robin, Mel Robbins, I think.
Yeah, I think, yeah,
Mel
I think
Robbins.
that, yeah, that sounds really familiar. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you do it because what it does, it doesn't allow your brain to take over. Because if you give your brain time to take over, it's going to pick the lazy way of going out.
That is a very nice advice, actually. You said something that you start with a glass of water with Celtic salt. What is a Celtic salt? And
So kill
what does it for us? What does it do for us?
So pretty much 70% of the people live in a constant state of dehydration, which is absolutely horrible because your brain function doesn't work right, your metabolism function doesn't work right. I mean, your cardiovascular system, your muscular system, everything needs to be hydrated. And one of the problems is people drink water all day long, but it just kind of flows through them. What the Celtic sea salt does, and this is what I've studied and read, is it actually helps drive the water into the cells, which actually helps hydrate you, right? If you're drinking the water and you're just peeing it out, it's not doing a whole lot. But with the Celtic sea salt, it actually helps the true hydration process of putting the fluid into the cells. I noticed for me is by using that 3 to 4 times a day, and I'll still drink the same amount of water, but I have to urinate a lot less. I even at night, I don't wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom as many times, even though I drank just as much water. But what it is, I'm retaining the water for the cells.
That's very interesting. Something perhaps to try. What else would you advise to people to look really into? What are the other changes, perhaps, that can be substantial, small perhaps in themselves, but make a big impact in their lives?
The biggest two, the biggest two things is just making sure you get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Only 1 in 12,000 people can operate at their full capacity with getting less than 7 to 8 hours of sleep. So the chances of you being that one person are very, very slim, right? And the studies show not getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep is absolutely brutal on the body. Just in one night, I'll give you an example. When the time moves forward that 1 hour, that one day, traffic accidents go up 25% and a heart attack rate goes up around 20 to 25%. And that's just losing 1 hour of sleep in one night. And that is like the best example of what sleep can actually do to the body. And most of us, you get so used to not feeling your best that it almost becomes the norm, right? So now your base has dropped so low that you're to even get up to your middle level is super hard for a lot of us. So the very first thing is being able to get enough sleep. Once you get enough sleep, make sure that you're hydrating and then make sure you get that at least the minimum amount of movement of 5,600 steps. And those three things right there, there's studies that show that over 50% of all the major diseases can be cured by having enough sleep, proper hydration, and enough movement in your day. And that is huge. I mean, that is huge. Just think if you could get rid of 60% of the people on medication by just doing those things.
Yeah, I find that in Western countries, we tend to go easier when it comes to take a medication, take a pill. And we want just the little thing that solves the problem instead of doing ourselves. So, what would be your word of wisdom, perhaps, to everybody listening that may just want to address a problem, a more serious problem, with a little pill, and to look instead to the real culprit?
It's almost like you could throw on the foil hat, right? And get into some conspiracy theory stuff. But if you look at what's going on in our world and how far we've advanced, but yet we can't cure the common cold. There's more people obese. There's more gyms opened in the world now than ever before. Yet there's more people obese. There's more people on depression medication. There's more everything that you read. There's more of everything that's bad for like Americans. The FDA is 45% funded by the exact people that they're supposed to be regulating, right? Our food industry. To believe in the people that are want us sick because that's how they're getting our money. They're going to be broke if everybody was healthy, right? If everybody's healthy, they'd be broke. So to go out there and actually believe that they're looking out for your best interest, it's, in my opinion, pretty naive. It is the easy way, and the easy way is not always the good way. There's a saying that good habits are hard to keep but easy to live with, and bad habits are easy to keep but hard to live with. And that is so huge because when you watch how people live their lives, they're all about just having the easy habit, the whatever. Let me go lay on the couch after work and drink 4 beers and then, take a shot of NyQuil to go to sleep at night instead of fixing all the little issues and creating a good foundation. I don't know how it's ever going to change. I think, just maybe one person at a time. But it is starting to, people are starting to go, you know what? This is crazy. There's no reason that everybody should be feeling like crap. I don't want to get political, but that make America healthy again. I am a huge advocate of making America healthy again because there is no way we should be the most out of shape country basically in the world. It doesn't make any sense.
I think it's America certainly has that problem, but it's not just in America. I live in the UK, and I think we have similar problems here. Rest of Europe, I don't think it's in a much better shape. So there might be countries where perhaps the habits or life perhaps is a little bit simpler, and perhaps there is less impact of the big whatever industry, big pharma, big food. But in Western countries, I agree with you. I mean, this is a major issue. Sometimes I think we also use food, for example, medication, as a sort of coping mechanism for other things. Stress, anxiety are at the top of the list, but there are other, coping with everything that we don't have the tools. How do you develop healthier coping mechanisms so you don't go into whether it's food or medication or other things? I know that you mentioned already you have all this morning routine and evening routine, but do you have sometimes that urge to go into into something, and how do you address that?
I still have a bad habit with sugar. Like, I love chocolate. It is the most,
Oh,
to me, it's the greatest thing in the world. Um, but
I'm
sugar
with
is
you.
it's but sugar is so bad. I know when I eat too much sugar, my joints hurt. I don't get my sleep quality's less. It's just so bad. But there are a couple little techniques that I try to do, especially for sugar. They say if you can find something sour, like maybe like a lemon, a lime, it'll actually cut that craving. It does work, but still it is nice to have that, every once in a while. And the big thing is we're not going to be perfect. You're absolutely not going to be perfect with your diet. You're not going to be perfect with your breathing and all that stuff. But trying to minimize the bad, right? Like soda. Soda and fruit juice are two of the worst things ever. Don't drink your sugar because you can take in so much more sugar by drinking the sugar. I don't know if you've ever seen when they pour the amount of sugar into a glass and they show like how much sugar it actually is by the time it's done. First thing is I haven't drank a soda in, I don't even know, 25, 30 years now. I haven't had caffeine in that same amount of time besides the chocolate. But pick out one little thing and get rid of it. What is like the one bad thing that you like? What is the worst thing that you do? Like if you're drinking 5 sodas a day, knock it down to one or knock it down to two, and then just small incremental steps to get rid of it, because it's not gonna work if you just try to do everything. You just have to do one little tiny thing, and the better you get, the easier it is. Brian Johnson, he's the aerobic coach that I listen to a lot. There's an example of him. He goes out into his garden or where outside, and every time he goes outside, he picks at least one weed. And by doing that, right, he picks one weed, but now you pick five or six weeds, and now his garden is all weed free because he just does it one simple weed every time he goes outside. So then to put it back for our life, maybe that weed is you buy five things of juice, every time you go to the grocery store. Don't buy them. Before, don't even bring that problem into the house. Leave that at the store. And now you're not even tempted with that. So now when you do have that craving, you have to get your butt up, get in the car, go drive to the store just to get that juice instead of already having it there ready for you. So that would be probably number one is pick one little thing, get rid of that, make that a new healthy habit, and then the next one, and the next one.
There is something connected to that. Whenever we set ourselves to achieve something, and perhaps we don't, then we hit ourselves a little bit too much. What is your advice in this case? And you mentioned a very important word for me and this podcast, which is forgiveness. And in that case, obviously, self-forgiveness. So what's your thought about forgiveness? And perhaps we can guess what it is. And do you think is an important tool? Let's put it this way: it's an important tool in anybody's toolbox to live a life that is balanced and in with that sort of inner peace, if you like.
I think forgiveness and knowing that you're not going to be perfect is absolutely probably the biggest thing in life. And I'll give you a story of why I say that. My mother never really learned how to forgive. And we got into an argument about 3.5 years ago, and she didn't speak to me for 2.5 years, or about 2.5 years. And we finally started talking again. And I think about 7 to 8 months into talking again, she had a stroke. She goes to the hospital. They find out she has cancer in her entire body, like her entire body's ravaged with cancer. I was the executor of her will. She gave it to me before. So, like, I knew it was bad. So I went in, I was like trying to make sure everything was okay. Then I come to find out that the same day, it was about 4 months before she had this, she went to the doctor, found out that she had cancer, and that day she changed her will and took me out of her will and made my younger brother the executor. And it's crazy because the very next day she sends me a text, "Hey, I love you, blah, 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 blah," right? And then it comes down to this, and we go in, and she never really forgave me because she kicked me out of the will. And even when she was dying, I chatted with her and I was like, "Hey, mom, I don't hold any grudges. I forgive you for everything. I hope you can forgive me. And I wish we never had this fight." And then she says, "Well, you can shit in one hand and wish in the other and see which one fills up first." And that was the very last words my mother ever said to me. To go out or be willing to go out holding a grudge for something that was, I mean, it was stupid. Like there was no reason for it to go that long. But in her brain, she made it into this big thing because she didn't forgive. She held grudges. And I thoroughly believe that it ate her up. There's studies done that show like you can cure a lot of cancer with just a positive mindset or to a negative mindset. And her negativity of having that always in there, not forgiving people, just allowed her to eat her body away and die. So I'm a huge, huge believer that I try not to hold any grudges. It is what it is. Again, you cannot control what other people are going to do. All you can control is yourself. And even yourself sometimes is going to make errors. We're not perfect, and it's okay to make errors. Just learn from it, man. If you maybe you're that person that you're doing fantastic, and all of a sudden you drink 4 sodas one day. Just try not to do it the next day. Say, you know what? I screwed up. Acknowledge it. That was me. That was my fault. But then don't do it the next day. And it's just you just got to make the next day better. You can't go back and change anything, right? You can't beat yourself up and hate yourself for the next month because you had 2 sodas or did something stupid. All you can do is say, "Hey, I did it. I learned from it, and try not to do it again."
Absolutely. I think this is particularly important for anybody who suffers of some sort of addiction. Whenever you are addicted, whether it's drug or food or alcohol, you try to do the best you can, and then it's enough that you don't follow whatever rule you set yourself to follow for a day, and then you just keep going because, well, you screwed up that one day. And so thank you very much for that reminder. I think it's extremely important. Ernest, I would like to come back on you, ask you, is there anything that you are working on or planning for 2025 and that you want to share with us? You mentioned a second book.
Yeah, I'm working on the second book. It's right now it's called Chasing Awesome, Master Your Life with Balance and or yeah, Chasing Awesome, Master Your Life with Balance. I'm also working on a big time working on trying to get the coaching thing out there a little more, out more. So I've been on a bunch of podcasts. I love doing them. I enjoy chatting with people. I'm also because right now I'm more focused on the over 40 gentlemen, 40, 45, somebody that's been successful in business that's a little bit out of balance. But I really like to help those other individuals that are trying to get to what, success is in the world. And if you can create a fundamental foundation for them early, then it's going to stop some of that imbalance later in life, right? If they have the correct little building blocks to be more balanced, then they're not going to be so out of balance later because I just don't think a lot of us were even taught anything about emotional control, what movement does for the body, sleeping, because there for a little while, sleeping was like it was frowned upon. If you didn't work 16, 18 hours a day, you weren't doing what you're supposed to do. So just trying to get those little things out there and just trying to get better and keep on getting better myself. I try to get 1% better every day. Does it happen every day? Hell no, but there's more days that I'm better than not. So that's a good thing, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, if our listeners would like to get in touch with you, perhaps, where can they find you?
ErnestWood.com. That's my website. You can actually schedule a call on there, or you can just directly email me, Ernie@ErnestWood.com. That's my email. You can also find my book on Amazon. I try to use all profits go to somebody else. I don't get anything out of the books. For the last month or so, I've been trying all the profits go to this young little guy. He's 7 years old. He's fighting leukemia. I just use the book is to get some of my word, like what I'm teaching out there, and then the profits are going to help somebody else. If you want a free copy of it, you can also go on earnestwood.com and download a free copy. But if you like to chat, feel free to set up a time. We can have a nice little conversation and see if we're a good fit for each other.
Absolutely fantastic. And as always, we will put all the links in the description to this episode. And a very final question. If there was one take-home message that you would love everybody to remember from this conversation, what that would be?
Just forgive yourself, allow yourself to not be perfect, and having accountability for yourself at the same time, right? So you can't just say, I'm not perfect and go make a ton of errors just because you're not perfect, but be okay making the errors, but don't strive to make the errors. And then be accountable for what you do to yourself. Just be accountable to yourself. Write in a journal, reflect on your day, and go, oh, you know what? I did really, really, really good today on this. And I didn't do so good on this. But do those little things and you'll be absolutely surprised on how quickly you can change your mindset, which changes a lot of different things in life. If you can just get that positivity, the gratitude, the forgiveness, empathy, and they all just start rolling together, your life becomes so much easier to deal with and so much happier.
Absolutely. Well, transformation isn't a one-time fix. It's a continuous process of growth, learning, and recalibration. And as we just learned by embracing self-awareness, practicing empathy, compassion, gratitude, and cultivating positivity, we can definitely begin to shape a life that feels truly fulfilling. And as you move forward, remember that every positive action that you take, no matter how small, it is a victory. And with this in mind, I want to leave you with a quote from William James, who said, "The greatest discovery of my generation is that a human being can alter his life by altering his attitude." That's so very true. Ernest, thank you so much for accepting our invitation and for sharing so much about what you do and your life and all these tips. I'm definitely going to try a few of them.
Thank you, Rosanna. Thank you very much for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Well, we would love to know what you think about this topic. From time to time, do you feel a bit of hassle, to use Ernest's word? If so, and if you want to discover the awesome person that perhaps you are just deep inside, I'm sure that you will find my conversation with Ernest that gives you a very good starting point of your journey of transformation. But if you need extra help, please do check Ernest's website, his work, his book, and follow him on social media. You will find all the links in the description of today's episode. Hopefully not, but if you have been affected in any way by the topic we discussed today, as always, I invite you to seek professional help. Join me next time when we will continue exploring inspiring and challenging situations. Because remember, we are together in this journey. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this content, subscribe to our channel and don't forget to hit the notification bell and like this video. See you on the next one.